Hello again. Today, a tutorial that I did for split coast stampers was published, and the technique I did was called double stamped vellum. And for that, I stamped and embossed in white on the front of some vellum, and used the same stamp to stamp on the reverse of the vellum with a coloured ink. So I'm going to do another card today, like this one, which is exactly the same principle, but instead of stamping and embossing in white, I've embossed in gold. And on the reverse, I just put the darkest leaf colour that I had in my possession, of an ink that wouldn't smudge too much on the back of vellum, and that was some olive green Stays On, which is quite a quick drying ink. So I'm going to show you the process of how I did this one. Slightly different, a few things maybe to pick up, because this was individual letters, and I've got a way of trying to keep them organised. The dies for that word were given to me by a friend. I wish she had two lots or what, I don't know, but I didn't have a packet for them. But I was thrilled to have them, and she told me they were by Poppy Stamps. Love Poppy Stamps dies and memory box dies. I think they're absolutely fabulous. So those are the dies that I used. They are in a word on the die, but in fact are separate letters. So I've got a little way to keep them in their place, shall we say. Okay, well, let's start. Here's my piece of vellum. I'm just going to rub one side with an antiseptic bag. And I've decided, as it's a sort of a Christmassy sentiment, to use a little holly stamp. And this one is by Stampers Anonymous. It's quite an old one. I don't know if you can tell the date from stamps, but you can see it's well used, but one of my favourites. So I'm going to stamp in Versamark for this. And the idea when you're doing this technique is to make sure that there are actually some gaps between the images, because the stamping of the coloured ink on the reverse of the piece of paper, a piece of vellum, will show through between those images in those gaps. So I like to turn the stamp around so that it's not always in the same orientation, just to give a more random sort of feel to things. So it'd be very difficult for you to see where I'm stamping. There is the remains of some Stays On this. It looks slightly green. I did wipe it, but Stays On is a particularly tenacious ink. And I didn't get out my specific Stays On stamp cleaner to clean it off. But it won't matter, because I'm going to use gold. The gold will cover any trace of the green that's on the vellum. So, nearly finished. Yeah. Just do another bit down the bottom corner. Right. That was a bit of a mistake to make. Had a little bit went on the actual piece of vellum. Never mind. I'll have to wipe that off before I come to heat it up. Put this out of the way. You'll see a bit of green on that pad. That's a bit of a news. I really should have got. That's a tip there. There's a tip. Always clean your stamps properly before you use them for something like Versamark. You can see there where I dropped it. Oh dear, messy woman. Whoops. It is a mess as well. I hope I can avoid that. Right, let's just put this back in the pot. Let's see what I can get, if I can get rid of any of that. Where are we? I'm blowing actually. I probably won't use that bit in the corner anyway, so avoid this space. That's the wrong one. Never mind, we'll heat it up. There's plenty there for me to use. This vellum is quite a nice thickness. It's quite a nice weight. It's from Anna Marie Designs, and it's described as a vellum stroke parchment. So just make sure that the embossing is all cool, because if you were to turn it over quickly before that's absolutely cool, it could smear, it could smudge if it's all this bit there not melted. And it always reacts more quickly if it's off a surface. Obviously, if it's got air underneath, it'll work more quickly. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over. I will just give this a quick wipe, because if it's got Versamark on, then it won't be so susceptible to the stays on. Let's dry it off. There we go. Right, here's my stays on. Olive green in stays on. I haven't used this for a very long time. This is on the reverse, the other side, the back side of the piece of vellum to where I did the gold. Doesn't matter where you do it at all. Hopefully you'll get some like that that's going to show through between the other images. That's the rubbish bit up there. I have to make sure I've got a decent bit somewhere to cut my sentiment from. Sorry this takes such a long time, but kind of got to be done. If you're using an individual stamp like this, if you're using a background stamp, you just do the whole thing and that's it. But this takes just a bit longer. I think that will probably do. Okay. Now, let's just wipe it. You can see the difference with the stays on cleaner. I'll get some out. Where is it? Stays on cleaner. You see, when you wipe with that, it all comes off. See? Should have done that in the first place, really. Never mind. We live and learn by our mistakes. Okay, so as I said, StazOn is a fairly quick drying ink. It has a little seal like this that you put on first, which helps to keep it from drying out. As I say, it is a very quick drying ink, and the lid does fit quite nicely. Okay, now for my card, I cut the words from this piece of vellum. There are two dies here. One is the base layer and the other one is the outline. So I'm going to cut the base layer from the embossed side, and you can look through this die as it's got a hole in to see what the colour will be like through it. If it was a solid die, I would have cut one out of a piece of copy paper and moved that around just to see, so I could see what the design would be through the letters. I want to be able to have a bit of gold and a bit of green on each of the letters. So looking at that, I think there's a bit gold there, gold, green, a bit of green, move a bit just that way, tad. Let's try that. Let's try that one. Into my machine. You can't see this, but it's just saying where it was. Right. Now, those three are not a problem. J-O-Y. And as you can see, each of them has got a little bit of gold on them, a little bit of green. So, like that, they don't show up much at all. So I'm going to cut the same thing from a piece of white card. Just a scrap. I keep all my offcuts from card bases. Right, here's my piece of white. Now then, these I am going to keep inside the die. I'll show you why in a moment. Keep these bits inside the die. As I said to you, it's a one-word die, but the letters are individual. And placement is really quite tricky. So what I'm going to do, take a little bit of low-tack tape, and I'm just going to put it across the back of those three letters. Okay, now I'm going to take them out. There we go. The next thing I'm going to do is to stick these letters onto those, and I'm going to use my favourite old Zig pen. So here we go. Sticking this all over. Now, vellum is notorious for showing your adhesive through, but for this process, it doesn't seem to show too much at all. So it gives you a bit of slidability. Get that on there. And because it's all over the back of the vellum, whatever mark it makes is repeated all over it, so it doesn't notice. This pen works on a little valve. The nib works on a valve, so when it's pressed, more glue is released. So you have to make sure that you're not just dragging it across the paper, that you are actually pressing from time to time. I think that was the way it came out, wasn't it? Was that where it came from? No, it's that way. There we go. And the last letter. Oh, yeah. Right. There's our joy. Looks nice, doesn't it? Now I'm going to cut the outline in gold. I've got a piece of gold mirror card here, and you can do it one of two ways. Well, you could probably do it one of several ways actually, but the two ways I would opt for would be either covering the back with a piece of double-sided sheet, adhesive sheet, or cutting it out and then using some micro dots. And that's the one I'm going to do now. So I'm just going to cut out the word, the outline for the joy. There we go. Right. There we are. I'm going to save the inners of these letters. I may use those for something else with a different liner on the outside. So all I need at the moment are these outer pieces. So J, keep that over there. Now the O has got two because it's got one bit for round the aperture in the middle and another piece for round the edge, so you mustn't lose those. Let's get the other bit out. There we go. And the Y. It's always easy if you've got a thing that forks out like that, that you take it from the direction that so that you don't break it apart as it goes down. Right. Now, here's my micro dots. Let's get a sheet of micro dots out. These are by Stix2, S-T-I-X-2, Stix2 Anything. Fabulous company, makes lots of interesting things for attaching things to something else. So, should have done this. There we go. One of these sheets, when you get these adhesive sheets, one is stiffer and one is much more flexible, and it's the flexible one which is the top. It's the stiff one that has the dots on there. So let's take the J, just check there's dots everywhere. Put it onto some dots, press down, and then lift it off. You can see that it's got some sticky on it. Okay. Get my tweezers. There we go. Here we are. And the O. Press it down. And lift it off. There we go. Let's have the outer piece of the O. My tweezers are quite pointy, but to get underneath here without damaging it, I use my pokey tool because it's much finer tipped and less likely to damage the die cut. There's the O, and lastly the Y. can use these sheets over and over as long as you can still see that there are some dots left. Try and use different places each time. There will come a time, obviously, when you can't use any more. See, rather than pulling this way where it might damage there, I pick it up this way. Oh, good grief. There we go. Right, there is my Y. Doesn't it look pretty? Now, I want to put this onto a card with some foam tape. So I need to be able to get to the other side. So what I'm going to do is a little more low tack tape. Again, this is from the same company, Sticks to Anything. And I'm going to put that on the front this time. Turn it over and carefully take it off the back. There we are. So I've got it off the back. Now I can add some low tack tape to each of these letters. So here we are. Little bit in there. And funnily enough, this double-sided foam tape comes from the same company as that and that, and this, and these glue dots, and this low tack tape, the whole 9 yards. Really good sticky stuff, absolutely super. Somebody said to me I ought to put links on my videos to these various people. I'm not quite sure I know how to do it. I'll have to investigate and see what you do, because I know a lot of people would like to know where I get stuff from, but not everybody lives in the same part of the world, so it is a bit tricky sometimes. There we go. Let's turn this over. One more piece. Is that too long? Is that all right? That's fine. Okay. Now for this one, I didn't want to do exactly the same thing. I thought I would have just a little variation. Here I used a tiny holly die. I think this was my favourite things. And for berries, I use, this is a border die. I don't know what make it is. And I just put some double-sided tape onto the back of a piece of gold mirror card, cut it out, and then I can just pick them up and stick them on. It's as easy as that. But this time I wanted to use the same size card as I normally do, which is a half a sheet of A4 cut in half and folded. But I've cut it the opposite way this time. I normally cut top to bottom down the length and tent fold. Here I've cut side to side and tent folded. So this is going to go kind of like this. But instead of having it on a panel like that one, I cut a little die cut in gold of some ivy, which I thought I would kind of like to trail like that somehow. So we're going to kind of see if I can do that for this one. So to stick these things on, one of the easiest ways to do that, I could either use my micro dots, or I could use some small glue dots behind the leaves, which is what I'm going to do this time. So one dot behind each leaf. And these are very small ones. They're not micro dots. Those are micro dots. These are just very small. They're degrees of smallness. Okay, one more to do. Here it is. There we go. Right. Now then, whoops-a-daisy. I think about, like, there's hair on or something on that one. I'll have to get rid of that. It must be molting. Right, let's have a look. Yeah, I think that'll be fine there. So just press those down and that's stuck. Now, to take off the double-sided tape from the back of this. 1, 2, 3. I was looking on the Sticks to Anything website, and it didn't look as though they had any of this narrow double-sided white tape. When you just put a search in for white foam tape or whatever, lots of other stuff, some black, but the white didn't show up. And I thought, oh dear, they haven't got any anymore. But when I went back to my previous order and clicked on view, they still had some. So I don't quite know what the deal was with the website. So I have to see. Right. Here's my joy. Get it in the middle. There we go. That's stuck down. This added over the top of the foam tape was because it is so darn sticky. If it touched the card, it would stick, and I'd have no chance to move it if I'd got it wrong. So this one just gives me a little bit more time to move. So now I need to take off the low tack tape off the top. And there we are. Another card for Christmas. And it looks really rather special. So another idea for your Christmas list. Anyway, thank you. As ever, I say, thank you so much for watching. I do really appreciate it. Thank you.